Hello, and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast number 1712. The topic is nutrition, and the title is Why Even Bad Diets Work. Now, what in the world am I talking about? How can a bad diet work if it seems as though like no diets ever work, right? But what we're going to talk about today is actually in reference to a back and forth I'm having with a potential member of the gym. So somebody's wanting to join the gym. We have everybody try the gym for a week for free. It lets them see if they like the gym. It lets me see if they'll play along with the rules of the gym and they'll fit our environment. And it's kind of a nice give and take for both people. I've learned over the years that not everybody follows rules and behaves in a proper way. Surprising. But it was better for me to give people a week for free before I signed them up and then had to kick them out. So I didn't want to do double the work of signing them up and then erasing them from the system. But this person, they wanted to join the gym, so they're doing their free week. And when somebody tries to join the gym, I send them a questionnaire just to learn a little bit more about their background. The benefit of this is a couple things for business. It gives me, a record of name and email, and then also I ask them for emergency contact information. So that's good. And then the other components are I ask them kind of like what their goals are, what are they looking for in a gym, and that way I can see over time, what is a trending kind of top 3 list of what people like about the gym, so I can ensure that I'm kind of always developing that well or keeping that focus. And then I also ask people, I kind of let them know about the services we have, let them know about the podcast, and I ask them if they have any topics or anything they'd like to hear discussed on the podcast. This person asked about the carnivore diet. Now, we did a podcast just a little bit ago, podcast 1708, so it was the last nutrition-focused podcast on the carnivore diet. A summary version of it is you eat anything that's muscle tissue. So you eat an animal, and that's your food. There's more, nuances and whatnot, but essentially that is a pretty good summary of it, is if it's muscle tissue from an animal, you can eat it. If not, you can't. That's the idea. Hence the name, like carnivore. I gave my background and my kind of opinion of it. I'm not a big fan of it in the sense that it's just way overly restrictive and there's just a lot. A lot about it that I wouldn't like and why I wouldn't recommend it to somebody. But that's in podcast 1708 if you want to listen to that. Now, we got a response from the person, and I want to share their response and then share kind of my response. And that'll go into today's topic of why even bad diets work. So they wrote, "Thank you for sharing. I'm sorry to hear you're not a fan. The last 2 weeks I've been taking a greens supplement in the morning before I lift. Then eating about a pound of steak for my first meal around 12:30 to 1 o'clock, somewhere in midday. Then I'll have my second meal, usually chicken or steak for dinner. If I snack, it's either beef jerky or fruit if I have a sweet tooth." And we'll unpack this as I go, but after I read it all, I'll unpack some of these things, but I want to read through their response entirety. Next paragraph. "I have noticed myself looking a lot leaner. My energy levels are better than normal, and I feel mentally clear. I lost about 3 pounds, but wasn't trying to lose weight. I haven't been checked, but I'd say I'm in the low teens for body fat percentage. Congratulations, that's awesome. And I'm guessing I went down by 8% since I started. However, growing up, I hated vegetables. I started taking the greens supplement about a month ago, and that was my first version of vegetables in the last 10 years, besides kale in a fruit smoothie. So I've never eaten a healthy diet from your perspective." And he was referencing what I would say is like a good healthy diet in podcast 1708. They finish, "I think the big difference I noticed was cutting out carbs and processed food. Also, all the salt has helped with my water intake, and it is a lot easier for me to drink over a gallon a day now." So that's awesome. And genuinely, might come back later, later in the podcast. It won't sound like I'm genuine, but I am genuine that I am very happy for this person that they're finding a groove, they're finding something that works, and that they're feeling motivated, they're seeing results, and they're progressing and moving forward. Like, I genuinely am excited for you because I know, I've been there before. I've been skinny and fat and everything in between. And anytime you can find something that motivates you, that pushes you forward, that you can see and feel results, that's just such an awesome feeling. Like you just feel good, because you're doing something and you're seeing something for it. So I am very happy for the new potential gym member that they're happy with the results they're seeing. Now, this leads into today's podcast. I said in podcast 1708 that the carnivore diet isn't a good diet. But the listener has reported that they're getting great results. So what's up? Am I wrong? It has happened before, but am I wrong about the carnivore diet isn't actually a good diet? No. I still stand by my opinion that it is not a good diet. And I want to explain why. And that leads into today's topic of why even bad diets work. So I want to give 5 reasons why bad diets work initially. And that's the term I left off the title because I'm trying to learn how to do better at clickbait. But bad diets do work initially. What makes them a bad diet is often that they don't work sustainably or for long term. So almost any diet will work initially. Why is that? And then also, how frustrating is that? Because then you don't know if it's actually a good diet or not, right? So a couple reasons. We're going to go through 5 reasons why bad diets work initially. Number 1 is overall improvement of habits. Even if the diet you're following doesn't follow proper like long-term longevity, sustainability type features, aspects. Typically, any diet is going to improve whatever the hell you were doing before you started the diet. Now, to learn what I would consider a good diet, you can go to our website, www.brutalirongym.com. We have one of the pages on the website is free nutrition education. You can click on that. The first thing you can see on that page is create your own nutrition program. You click on that document. You can print the document if you want. It sends you to a podcast, takes you step by step, shows you all these calculations of how to set up a healthy diet. So you can actually set up your own diet if you want. That will teach you what I would consider is the best thing. And a lot of things we'll go through here today are violated with the carnivore diet. Then you'll find that this is going to be true of many other diets as well, is there are some aspects that are awesome and great, and then some that are not. So the improvement of overall habits is one reason why many diets work initially. People are just more consistent with their food. They're more aware of, they're more attentive to. So typically we would overeat some days, undereat some days, and the variance would be quite great. It's not uncommon for me to see somebody eat 3,000 plus calories a day, and then the next day they have 1,200, 1,200. And then they have another day of 1,500, another day of 1,100, then a day of 4,000. And it's just everywhere. It's all over the place. So any diet is typically going to improve your consistency of daily caloric intake. That's going to give you more energy because you didn't know this. You would be unaware that your energy was so shifting due to food. You might blame it on sleep, you might blame it on stress, blame it on a million other things. But if your food varies, by thousands plus calories a day, you're going to have crappy consistency of daily energy that you're going to be attributing to a lot of other things that is actually food related. By normalizing and making more consistent your caloric intake, you're going to have more consistent energy. So even if it's a bad diet, if you're more aware of your food and you're more consistent with calories, you'll feel better. The other thing is the meal frequency. It typically is going to get you eating more consistently per day in regards to when you eat or how often you eat. That also helps improve energy levels and it helps decrease water retention. So if you notice, there's going to be a couple factors of why this person lost a little bit of weight when they started. One of them is that they dropped, carbohydrates, and I'll talk about that in a second. But another component is just going to be they're probably more consistent with their food, and that's going to reduce water retention. Anytime we're more consistent with our food, we reduce stress within the body, which is, you can kind of measure in some degree with cortisol levels. If cortisol levels are high, which is like a stress hormone, our body tends to hold on to more water. So if you're eating more consistently, the body's going to feel like it's getting food more consistently. It's less stressed about periods of not eating. Therefore, you have less cortisol. Therefore, you have less water retention. So that's two kind of factors under the umbrella of overall improvement of habits as to why we tend to feel better even though a diet might be bad diet. The second thing is our mindset. We're just more motivated. Anytime you start a diet, you're more motivated, you're more excited. You are kind of starting with this idea of like attacking, an attack mindset. I'm going to do this, I'm going to crush this, I'm going to be great. And then when you run into little troubles, you tend to solve them. I'm not supposed to, I'm not supposed to eat right now, so I'm just going to say no to that, and I'll wait, and I'll be busy, and I'll go do something else. But 2 or 3 weeks in, you're like, I'm freaking hungry, I'm tired, I'm going to eat, I don't care if I'm not supposed to eat or not. Our willpower, our ability to make better decisions gets worn down over time. When we start a diet, we have kind of the greatest amount of that. So we can make the best choices the most often, and we feel excited to do it. We feel empowered by saying no, or by, forcing ourselves to eat a meal because we know we're going to grow, and you're more excited. There's just so much more motivation, so much more excitement when you start a diet, that even if it's a bad diet, it'll still work initially. The third thing that I have listed here as one of our reasons is what's bad about bad diets is often delayed. What do I mean by that? One thing, for example, would be cravings. If your body feels like it's not being given the amount of food that it needs, or it's being denied entire categories of food, such as carbohydrates or sugars or things like that, it'll start to talk to you. You'll start to see something and be like, man, damn, I'm hungry for that. And you normally wouldn't. I know, I've done a couple crazy diets over the years. I've lost 50 pounds in 8 weeks before. I've lost 50 pounds in 10 weeks or less 3 different times. I lost 70 pounds over the course of a 10-month diet. I've done a lot of crazy diets. Now, I love it because it's a lot of research and fun experimentation. But one of the things, I remember one diet, I had a craving for candy bars. I don't eat candy bars, and it's not like, I'm better than people who do eat candy bars. I don't mean it that way. I just typically wouldn't eat a candy bar. If I was going to eat something, I'd probably eat ice cream. That's one of my favorite sweet treats. So candy bars are just not on my radar. But I remember the one diet I was doing, I would see a candy bar, and I'm like, I bet that would taste good. And I would be at a grocery store, a convenience store or something. They always have candy bars at the checkouts, and they're like, damn, we can't get away from these things, And it was funny to me because I hadn't bought a candy bar in years. But then all of a sudden, I started wanting all of them. And that's just typical. Your body's going to try to get you to eat more if it recognizes it's in a deficit, especially if it's a severe deficit, meaning the deficit isn't properly controlled. Your body's going to chirp. It's going to chirp, 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 chat, chat, chat. It's going to get your attention, and it's going to start bugging you and bugging you and bugging you for more. So cravings will start to increase over time. If you notice in this listener's message, they said they were eating fruit when they had a sweet tooth. Technically, fruit is not allowed in a carnivore diet, but it's smart because typically fruit has very low calories in it. Even though it's straight sugar, it still has relatively low calories compared to, say, eating a tub of ice cream. So it's a smart choice on their part of okay, if I'm feeling a craving and I don't want to ruin my diet, but I don't want that craving to continue to grow and build, and then all of a sudden it becomes, unbearable and I crazy overeat. They're finding a kind of a way to kind of get around it. How do I deal with these cravings? I might break the rules a little bit, but it's going to help me from breaking them even more, right? So that's, it's in a sense, it's a good choice on their part, but that is something that will happen is they're going to have cravings, and the cravings are going to get kind of bigger and bigger and bigger. And then also, as we said, our willpower to make the best choices or to avoid bad choices gets lessened over time. So those two things are kind of peaking later on. When you first start, you don't need to notice either one, but a couple weeks in, a couple months in, you're definitely going to notice. And the other components that are bad about bad diets that are delayed is the inflexibility. So something might work really great for a week or two, and then all of a sudden you go on a work trip or a family event, or you just have a crazy day and you missed a meal and now you're trying to figure out how to make it up later on. So if they have a pound of steak for lunch every day, so their first meal is around 12:30, 1 o'clock, and it's a pound of steak. You're not going to be able to always get that. There's going to be times where maybe all of a sudden you have to do a doctor's appointment, you have like some errands you got to run, and you just can't get to a pound of meat as a meal. What do? And maybe they're going to find their way around it. That's great. But often diets tend to have inflexibility to where, okay, if I can only eat X and Y and I can never have Z, what do you do if Z is all you got? So that's going to be something that initially might not be glaring, but it does show up later on. And the other thing, and there's a lot more under this category, but I just listed 3 ideas. The other one that I listed was blood work. And I mentioned this in podcast 1708, that eating all animal products is not great for cholesterol. It's not great for kind of quite a few things. It's very restrictive in regards to micronutrients. Now they're taking the greens supplement. Congratulations. Very smart. Very, very, very smart. So you can hear they're making very smart decisions on how to make the carnivore diet work for them. They're doing a great job. But that is something to consider is blood work. When you're doing a lot of animal products, you got to watch cholesterol. So I would definitely recommend somebody with a high animal content intake to definitely get their blood checked every 3-6 months, something like that. Reason number 4 that I have for why bad diets work is often people start to bend the rules. So they bend the rules to make the bad diet work in the sense of, and I'm not, this is not me tattletelling or anything. Like I said about them eating fruit for the sweet tooth. Great idea. Smart. Okay. Do that. Please keep doing that. But it's an example that people tend to kind of, okay, if I'm struggling within the diet, in this component, how can I bend this a little bit to make it sustainable? Ooh. And that's what we want. We want whatever the diet is to be something we can do long term. So for example, if your diet's not very flexible and you have to have a pound of steak at lunch, you might say, okay, if I'm super busy, I might stop at a hibachi place and maybe I'll just get a double order of meat and eat a little bit of rice and I'll have a good meal. Whether it's steak, whether it's chicken, whatever it might be, they'll find ways to kind of figure it out, right? Maybe they'll get just a double portion of meat, but all of a sudden, you pay a lot of money and it's only really 8 ounces or 12 ounces, so you're a little bit low on calories. Then all of a sudden at dinner, you're super freaking hungry, and then the sweet tooth kind of grows and it kind of develops from there and gets worse. But that's the idea, is another reason why bad diets tend to work is people tend to start to bend the rules, which is a good idea, but it's no longer the actual diet. The 5th reason I have is just a kind of catch-all, is the addition of other factors. So if they're starting a diet, but they're also starting certain supplements, then, how much of it's the diet, how much of it is the supplement. So you're a little uncertain, but it helps push results and it makes the diet appear better. So if you're taking like any kind of diuretic that helps you lose a little bit of water weight, and all of a sudden the first week you lose 4 pounds, the next week you lose 3 pounds, the third week you lost 2 pounds, and you're like, oh man, by the first month I've lost 10 pounds. This diet is working great. Not really. If you're taking a strong diuretic, out of those 10 pounds, it might have been 8 pounds of water, and that's actually what you lost, but only 2 pounds of fat. So the diet isn't doing what you think it is if it's being masked or helped by supplements. Another thing is just maybe somebody's more consistent in their training. They start this new diet and they start going to the gym, or they start being more active in their workouts. They start going for a walk at lunch. They start doing more movement. And that, again, kind of masks what the diet alone is actually doing. And accountability. Typically, if you're starting a diet, maybe you're starting as a group with somebody else, paired with somebody. Maybe you're going to post it on social media. You're telling some friends. You're just involved with a community of some kind or some type of check-in. Maybe you have a coach, or an app that you check in with. So there's more accountability, and that's actually helping push the results beyond just what the diet would do by itself. So this is 5 quick reasons as to why bad diets work initially. What would I suggest you do? My suggestion is start with anything that gets you started. Whether it's a good diet, bad diet, anything in between, I don't care what it is. If something gets you started, then that's the best thing because it got you started. It got you moving. So start with anything. It does not matter if you start with like what I recommend for like that I said was free on the website. That's okay. If you don't want to start with that and you want to start with, the carnivore diet, you want to start with, a keto diet, you want to start with intermittent fasting, you want to start with whatever the HCG crazy shit is that people do, like whatever it is that you want to do. If it gets you started, it gets you started. That's the goal. Get started. Get moving. So once you're moving, then as you run into issues, as you run into an obstacle, you solve them one by one, and you solve it in a way that it fits your needs but doesn't violate kind of the guiding principles of proper nutrition. When you look at what makes diets work, the most important component is calories, then protein, then meal timing, which also kind of is meal consistency, and then macronutrient choice per meal, meaning should I have carbs mostly at this meal, fats mostly at this meal, kind of what should be my energy source paired with my protein. And you choose all that based on what's best in the moment. And that's the type of diet that I would recommend people do, is just learn how to regulate your calories and your protein, learn to pick meal timing that allows you to be consistent and fits your daily schedule, pick foods that you like that actually fit your needs at different times of the day. Like my idea of diets is not really a diet in the sense where it's a super structured way you eat just to get from A to B and then what do you do after? I would rather you just learn how to eat. That's it. Like, just learn how to eat. Learn how to manage food, right? So you can give somebody $1,000, but if they don't know how to manage it, they're going to lose it. If you're going to give them $1 million, if they don't know how to manage it, they're going to lose it. I'd rather teach you how to manage money than just give you a crap ton of money, right? That's what we look at nutrition. Rather than just getting a diet, following a diet, get where you want, and then what do you do then? Learn how to eat. Learn how to eat. That's the most important component. And that's what we teach on the website. That's what I hopefully teach in these podcasts, is just learn how to eat. And then you can kind of manipulate that however you need for whatever your goals are. But to this podcast listener, to the potential member, congratulations. Awesome. I am super freaking happy for you that you're seeing results. I hope that you do continue to see results. I hope that this works for you. If you make some small modifications along the way, awesome. If that helps you be more consistent, great. Whatever works for you, make it work. And I hope that you have a great time with it. If there's ever anything you need, just reach out to me. My email is brutalironjim@gmail.com. And then for all the listeners, I hope that same thing is, if you start any diet, if it gets you started, awesome. But don't be afraid to make some changes. Don't be afraid to personalize it along the way. It's okay if what you end with doesn't look like what the diet started with, but it's what's best for you. That's the goal, right? So get yourself started, make some changes, personalize it along the way, so that way you're just managing your nutrition well, as we would want to, for example, manage money well. Okay, if you have any follow-up questions, if you need anything, my email is brutalironjim@gmail.com. If you like our podcast, please share the podcast. If you like the podcast, please consider donating to support it, which you can do on our website. If you like the information we share in our podcast, you can find other information from us on our social media pages on Instagram and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.